something pretty incredible happened over the last weekend that you might have missed. The regional season has finally begun for the Duelist Nexus season, and we already have some spreadsheets and charts showing us what are the best performing decks in this format. And you will be surprised, it's not Pearly, it's not Kostura, it's not Vanadium, it's not Unchained, it's actually branded. But it's not the branded you think it is, because it's actually, you guessed it, branded Chimera. The branded Chimera strategy has begun to take up some traction, and it's actually doing incredibly well during the first weekend of regionals. A lot of people are picking up the deck because honestly, it's one of the cheapest strategies out there alongside Unchained, and with, picking up a few super rares and dusting off your branded core, specifically only the 3 branded fusion in the Fallen Valbas and, a few fusions from the extra deck, you get a pretty solid deck that has a lot of non-engine, very strong starters, 1-card combos, and just a lot of power, and it's showing. And while the old branded Espia has remained a solid deck that didn't receive any hits besides branded Expulsion, this spreadsheet, credit to Septo for putting this together. So you can see here that branded takes up the majority of the spots. We also have Unchained right at second. Kostura, the deck has not been hit yet. We are assuming that it will, but it hasn't yet. Vanadium, Rescue Ace, Dragon Link, pretty much an even spread, 7, 6, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4. It's pretty much an open meta with a lot of different decks topping. And you can see that every time it says branded, it also notes that Chimera is the variant that they chose to play. So first of all, this is pretty amazing to see. A deck that has pretty much come out of nowhere, didn't show a lot of promise back in the OCG, but is doing wonders here. And I think these wins, despite being really, really good for the branded community, also bring up a lot of interesting questions that I personally brought up on Twitter, in that branded Chimera, being a relatively strong deck, is probably not as strong as the other decks in this chart. So what do I actually mean by not that strong? You can say, Galzo, it's actually topping more than any other deck this format currently in the first weekend. That is incredibly true. But I want to break down the problems of the deck and talk about what I think this deck can do and maybe will do moving forward. And personally, I want to say that I have a lot of experience with this deck. I played hours and hours on DB. I also have 2 locals already playing the deck. I played it in paper for 8 rounds, which is basically the length of a regional in most cases. And in the first tournament, I did really good. I played the Despia variant with Alubers and branded opening, which one of them topped as well in the list that we just saw. And it went really good. I felt really good about the deck. I was able to beat up a lot of matches that I was scared of, finally ending up losing in time to Rika in the finals, but I was pretty happy with the deck. Then during the second weekend, I took a variant very similar to this one, with a lot of non-engine and no Despia stuff at all, and I got absolutely obliterated. I didn't know if I was not feeling very comfortable with the deck, maybe I was missing some consistency, and I think this deck is way less consistent than the Despia variant, but it also has a lot of upsides. Mainly, you can see this deck can run a lot of non-engine, and specifically here, I'm running the Edgem chain package, but if you take away these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards, you have 7 more slots for things like hand traps, board breakers, just a lot of non-engine because the engine is relatively small. I'm also preparing for my regional season now, and I'm playing a lot with this deck, testing out a lot of different variants. There is, of course, this variant. I also played a lot with the DPE variant that actually topped. This is the exact same list. Shout out to the guy who topped. This list is really, really fun. You can fall back on a lot of, engines that are not tied to Chimera. And obviously, there is also the crossout list that, plays a lot of more hand traps, not the patchwork engine. And, since it's very vulnerable to interactions, can actually use crossout to, fight the mirror, but also fight a lot of the hand traps that stop it. And then very close to the list that I actually played in my first locals that I did really well with, with the Despia stuff and so on. So the first problem with the deck I want to talk about is consistency. In these pure builds that don't run Despia, you have 3 cards that are your combo starters. Branded Fusion that can get you to Gazelle, sending it to the graveyard, grabbing you the Cornfield Codal, and from that it is 1-card combo. Then you skip a step, and the second 1-card combo is the Codal itself that gets you the Mirror Swords Knight, which is the third 1-card combo. When you normal summon it, you get Berthamat, gets you Chimera Fusion and Gazelle. You make the king, you bring back Chimera Fusion, and you basically end on a board that is only a hand rip from the hand, 1 monster negate on the field, and 1 negate to a targeting effect. In addition to that, you also have Chimera Fusion that can go into a sleuth of monsters from your extra deck, mainly Guardian Chimera if you want to get some removal and draws. Then, of course, the King can bring you back monsters from the graveyard, so you can do it all over again. But you end up sometimes bricking on your hand traps because there are only several combos that start your combo, and there are also a few 2-card combos. You need to open Gazelle with Berfomat, or Berfomat maybe with Chimera Fusion and something else that you can fuse with. This is why Edging Chain is kind of nice in this deck, because if you open it and Gazelle, you can make the Chimera Fusion because it's a fiend and this is a beast, so you can still end up on your king. Another thing that I'm kind of worried about this deck is that it's extremely linear, extremely predictable, and extremely telegraphed. This deck, turn 1, and the starting play is only a linear combo. You want to go through Branded Fusion. If you can't, you want to go through the Codal. And if you can't do that, you want to normal summon the Mirror Swords Knight and sack it off to summon the Big Winged Berfomat. This is basically the line. You can also use monsters from your hand to go into your extra deck with other combinations of cards, mainly like, again, Chimera, to draw more, get to that Branded Fusion if you don't already have it, and start playing from there. Of course, Book of Moon, Talent, Super Poly, all incredibly powerful that also can net you advantage. But again, the combo is super telegraphed and there is only basically one line you can go in. And the final piece of thought is that it has a pretty tough matchup against some other things in the format. Kashtira, Woodshifter, and Arise Heart really do incredible amount of damage to this deck because you need access to your graveyard. You need your Mirror Swords Knight to be returned from the graveyard by the King to gain more follow-up. Otherwise, you just end on nothing. Chimera Fusion as well. You need to recycle it, and if it's banished, that's impossible. Branded is also a pretty hard matchup because Branded could do a lot more than this deck. It has interruptions from the grave and the field, and in this deck pretty much you end on a mini boss with a couple negates from graveyard and a lot of follow-up, but you run through that 3 times and you basically ran out of your engine. And then there's of course Unchained, which was 2nd place most topping deck in the regionals this weekend, and Unchained, even though it's manageable and you can definitely win that matchup, your deck relies on destroying cards and controlling the board, while their deck actually gains a lot of advantage from being destroyed. You can, of course, utilize a lot of your power spells and non-engine to stop that deck, but still, if your only form of interaction is mostly removal, it's going to be an uphill battle. I'm really interested to see how this deck moves forward. If this is the situation after the first weekend, people are going to have their eyes on this deck. People are going to start countering it and see what they can actually do to stop this if this is winning so much. So yeah, even though I saw some success with it and I'm still struggling to, keep up the pace with testing a lot to figure out what this deck can actually do against a variety of matchups in preparations for my regional, I'm still seeing a lot of weak spots that are kind of surprising to me when I open bricks after bricks with the same deck list that won, even though I know that this deck has a lot of power and can do a lot of damage. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about Chimera? What do you think about the future and the problems that this deck currently has? What are you testing? What variants did you play with? Leave it all in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, don't forget to check out my sponsors, affiliate links in the description below, and also consider joining as a member to get exclusive access to all of these deck lists on Discord before anybody else. Thank you so much. Long live Branded. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.